Good. Okay. Boker Tov, everybody. Welcome, class.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Class number 93 in our ongoing series. I was having an internal debate when I'm going to call, please God, next week's class, because we're going to go on the Machzor. So I don't know if that's class 94 or that's class 1, but I think I'll call it class 94 if you allow me. And then maybe it'll get posted as a separate thing. But anyways, because the Machzor, the Siddur, there are differences, of course, but we'll get there. But basically, okay, please God, next week through Yom Kippur, that's I guess 4 Fridays, we'll start. We'll go through the Machzor. Obviously, not the whole thing. If it takes us 93 weeks, so we're not even at Shemona Esrei, so we know we're not going through the whole thing. That's what I'm going to focus on, I believe, is Shemona Esrei, not the regular Shemona Esrei. They always say 4 times on Rosh Hashanah, not Malchiyot, Zichronot, and Shofar. But okay, we'll see how that goes. But please God, that'll be starting next week. But this week we're going to try to get through at least as much as we can, maybe more. We'll see. The first paragraph of the Shema. So last week, I think we left off Bishinantan Levanecha, to teach your children. And we discussed 2 interpretations of the Midrashic interpretations. Bishinantam is a plain word. Vishilashtam, you're supposed to divide your learning into 3. Mikra, Mishnah, and Talmud. Biblical text or Tanakh. Mishnah doesn't exactly mean the 6 orders of the Mishnah, although that more or less is included. It just means the Jewish law without analysis. Just, you do this and you don't do that. Like a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. The Mishnah tells you what you have to do. And Talmud is the analysis. So you're going to have Talmud and non-Talmudic sources, and you have a lot of Mishnah in the Talmud. So those are the 3 things. We discussed that way at the beginning. When we discussed in the morning, that's what we do. We take a little bit of learning. Elu dvarim shalem shir yivarachak Hashem v'yishmerecha. We say Birchat Kohanim, then we take a Mishnah, then we take a piece of Talmud. That's why we have Rabbi Yishmael Omer. We do that twice. We discussed that way like 90 classes ago about that cycle of learning, because the Siddur, while it's a prayer book, the word Siddur doesn't mean prayer, it means order. So that tells us all the things we need to do. Like it basically, if you only could have one book, the book to have is the Siddur in a certain sense, because we do a little bit of learning. As a matter of fact, we discussed that some authorities say that Shema, that the purpose of putting Shema in the Siddur, or one of the aspects of having Shema is you fulfill the mitzvah of learning Torah. There's a mitzvah to learn Torah every day and every night. So there are ideal ways to fulfill that mitzvah, but the most basic way is to say Shema. That's a fulfillment of the mitzvah of learning Torah, not of the mitzvah of prayer. The Siddur puts in Pirkei Avot, it puts in all kinds of things. But anyways, but what we want to do is, since I'm pretty sure the real reason is because the rabbis knew, especially 2,000 years ago, that 98% of people were not going to be learning. Like, when they came home at night, they weren't going to night seder, and they didn't pull out the art scroll to learn Daf Yomi. So basically, at least let the Jew who was primarily illiterate, most Jews were illiterate, like Rabbi Akiva was the norm, the pre-40 Rabbi Akiva was the norm. So the rabbis say, okay, you have the Siddur, you'll do a little bit of learning, you'll do a little bit of Tehillim, you'll do a little bit of everything. Okay, so you have to learn sort of a 3-pronged approach. And we discussed, Rabbeinu Tam says we don't do that anymore. Ashkenazim don't do that anymore. I think he's more or less giving an excuse. That was one of the, all the scholars point out, that was one of the main things. Chaim Soloveitchik discusses this often, at one of the roles of the Balei HaTosfot, which of course was picked up by all great rabbinic authorities, if a religious community is doing something that isn't exactly in keeping with the sources, we reinterpret the sources. I don't know how to put it in a more diplomatic way. In other words, we read this. In other words, it must be the Jewish community. They're if Einam Nevim, if they're not prophets, they are the children of prophets, as our sages say. So the Jewish community does what's right. They have all the surveys. If you ask 100 people, what was that show? I don't know. They used to have filming. I don't know. What was that show? You used to ask the audience, and most of the time the audience is right. Like if you ask 100 people, what's some question, when that's the masses. So there was this idea the masses of the Jews are doing what's right. That's really the basis of minhag. The Gemara says, "Pok chazi mai amadavar." If you're not sure what the custom is, go see what are the people doing. Pok chazi, go and see my amadavar, what the amcha, what the average Joe on the street, so to speak, is doing, and that's good. That justifies a custom. So people are doing them, so we say, well, it means this, it means that. We always like to excuse what the people did. That's part of Chaim Soloveitchik's famous article on Rupture and Reconstruction, the difference between the Aruch HaShulchan and the Mishnah Berurah. That kind of changed since World War II. The Aruch HaShulchan, that's what he famously does. That's probably the most famous example is when he doesn't like it, but he kind of, I don't know if it justifies the word. He said, no, a woman who doesn't cover their hair today is not so bad. It's a little bit different. And the laws that we used to have don't apply anymore because it's a different society. But he did that very often. That was just, that you would justify because you don't want to say the Jewish people are doing wrong. So I don't want to curse all the way, but the simple pshat is Rabbeinu Tam's not really right. I mean, it's okay to learn Talmud. Maybe if you learn Talmud in a phenomenal way, that every time they quote a pasuk, you look it up. But it is better. The Sephardic approach is better than the Sephardic community, I think. And many they do learn Mikra and they do learn Mishnah, and you don't learn Talmud till 15. That was the Maharal was very upset. Maharal, great Ashkenazic leader, Maharal of Prague, famous Judah Lau, passed away, I believe, in 1609. So he very heavily criticized this style of Talmud. And he was, remember, he lived during pretty much the beginning of the printing press. Printing press invented in the mid-15th century. But, the first Talmud is printed in 1523. The Maharal is a young boy at that time. I think the Maharal had a pretty long life. So the Maharal is very upset at the printers. Why did the printers put Tosfot on the side of the page? Because it's too didactic. It's too, put basic stuff. Don't put all this Tosfot stuff on the side. He was very upset that we've gone away from the style of teaching that the Mishnah recommends, that the age of 5 to 10 is Tanakh, 10 to 15 is basic Jewish law, and only at 15 do you learn Gemara. Anyways, that's what that was one interpretation. You should split up. You should whatever that word is. The learning should divide up into 3 cycles. Okay, and then we said Al Tegam Gemba, much harder. Don't stammer. When somebody asks you a question, Tor Bishilam means it should be very sharp. It should be very sharp. Okay, what can we do? Now, just let's continue. Bish, I don't know what that means exactly. Who doesn't? You have to look up things. Who can know Torah? But it means you basically what the Torah is saying. You should be fluent in Torah. So I don't think practically means you should be fluent. The person is expected to know the whole Shulchan Aruch by heart. That's beyond unrealistic. Although you should know, people know when Rav Yosef, this happens all the time. An author writes a book and he has a plan A and Jewish history turns it into plan B. So probably the best example is the Rambam, right? What was plan A of the Rambam? What was the Rambam's plan? Why did the Rambam write the Mishnah Torah?
So you wouldn't need one book.
So you only need one book. That's why I called it the Mishnah Torah. You need a Tanakh in his books. A little bit, and not everybody would have the courage to say something that the only 2 books you need in your library are the Torah and my book, but that's the Rambam. And they called it the Mishnah Torah, and Jewish history didn't, and he doesn't quote sources, he doesn't quote their opinions. Who cares what other people say? Who cares what the sources are? I'm the source. You follow me. Obviously, Jewish history didn't take too well to that, but we didn't exclude the Rambam. We just, we don't really paskin the Shulchan Aruch became more important. So whatever. And what was so that's relatively famous. The Shulchan Aruch's plan, I think, is a little less famous. Also, we don't do at all. What was the Shulchan Aruch? Why did it? So that's why the Rambam calls it the Mishnah Torah. Why does the second Torah? You need the Torah, the original, God's Torah, and my Torah. That's all you need. I'll tell you all you need to know. Good, and then study philosophy all day. That's really what the Rambam says. Learn the Torah. You got to know the halach. You got to keep it, but that's not the real McCoy. The real McCoy is philosophy, talking about God, the Moreh Nevuchim. That's the real thing. That's what the Rambam writes. I mean, people don't like that so much. It's not from. But okay, there's Maimonides and your Maimonides and his Maimonides. Everybody, Maimonides, they interpret as they like. Okay, what was the Shulchan Aruch's plan? What did Rav Yosef Karo have in mind? Rav Yosef Kar wrote a set table, a Shulchan Aruch. It's the most bare bone halachic code. There is nothing, no reason. The Rambam gives you stories, background. We talked last night. Those are Rabbi Feinstein. The importance of telling a story is very, very nice, very, very beautiful. So the Shulchan Aruch, the Rambam has that a little bit, and the Rambam often goes on beautiful ideas. He'll usually at the end of a chapter or the end of a topic, he'll wax beautifully about the meaning of this. Really quite beautiful. And the Shulchan Aruch doesn't do any of that. This is a skeleton. This is what you got to know. And the idea is, at a Jew, it was meant as like a guide for the worker, like out in the field. Like he doesn't have time to learn. You don't have time to learn everything. The Rav Yosef Kar felt you should learn Gemara, but who has time? So I'm going to give you what you got to know, and you're going to review it every 30 days. You're going to learn the four, how do you say the four parts of the Shulchan Aruch, right? Shulchan Aruch divided into four big books. They're not so big if you take out all the commentaries, and you review it every 30 days. So that's like people like laugh. Are you talking? People spend a whole lifetime in yeshiva and they don't cover the whole Shulchan Aruch because they learn the Shach and the Tas and the Piskei Tshuva and the Ksod and the Zivas. Oh my God, you don't go anywhere in the Pri Megadim, in the Magen Avram. I mean, is this if you look at the page in the Shulchan Aruch, this is the Shulchan Aruch, and this is the commentaries, So and the Ramah added a tablecloth. It's not enough because the Shulchan Aruch, the set table, wasn't so nice. It didn't have any cutlery or fine china. It just had the Sephardic approach. What about the Rosh and the great? The Rambam did use the Rosh, okay, but that was the one quasi Ashkenazi, okay. But what about all the ballet? Tosfot, all that. So the Rama added a set table, a mapa, they call it. But anyways, so the plans of the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch did not happen. They wrote their books to be A and B, and it turned out to be C and D or Y and Z. Anyway, so that's the idea that we should be fluent. That's really what the Shulchan Aruch is saying, that a Jew should be fluent. That only means you got to know everything about it. It means you got to know how to live your life, like without thinking, which we'll pick up on in a moment. Okay. Now, notice, of course, where's the mitzvah to learn Torah mentioned in the Torah? So it's interesting. The rabbis derived the mitzvah to learn Torah, not so, I mean, it's true, Vishinantam Levanecha, but when they quote the source in the Gemara in Kiddushin, we won't do the Talmudic analysis. They quote the pasuk from the second paragraph of the Shema. We'll have to discuss, and I don't know what class number, when we get to Please God, the second paragraph of the Shema, a lot of repetition. The first part is not repetitive, but then the end is all repetitive. The end is tefillin again and mezuzah again, and teaching Torah again. That part is repetitive. So what exactly is going on there? But it's similar. It's not exactly the same. Is more direct. You have to teach. Vishinantam, we don't exactly know what it means. That's why the Gemara is playing around with it. Vishinantam, vishilashtem, it should be sharp. Shinun, it should be sharp. You should know it well. So the actual mitzvah to quote unquote to learn Torah is derived from the verse v'limadam et epenechem. You should teach your children. Now, what's interesting is all the verses about teaching Torah are about learning Torah, not about learning Torah. They're all about teaching Torah. In other words, the Torah phrases the obligation to learn as a obligation to teach, and everybody knows, anybody who teaches knows the best way to learn is to teach. That's why I thank you all the time, because I gain the most from this year. Anybody else gaining is just an extra bonus. I'm very happy. But when you teach, that's how you truly learn. And also when you write, that's maybe even better, because when you teach, like, I can ramble and, I don't have any limits of how long I have to say. The sentence don't have to be so precise. It should be, but it's not the same thing. When you write, it's a much different, much harder in a sense, but much also very, very meaningful. You learn a lot. The Melamed Lahoel, the most important, probably rabbinic authority ever to live in Germany, Rav David Tzvi Hoffman. Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch is probably the most famous and very important in other ways, but as a halachic authority, probably maybe the Binyan Sion, Rav Yaakov Ettlinger, the Rebbe of Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, but probably the Binyan Sion, Rav Yaakov Ettlinger, who passed away in 1879, something like that, and Rav David Tzvi Hoffman, who passed away in 1921, were the greatest German authorities. The Rav David Tzvi Hoffman was the rector of the Hildesheimer Rabbinical Seminary, founded by Israel. Hildesheimer was also a great posek, but not quite as famous in that area. But Rav David Tzvi Hoffman, in the introduction to his responsa letter, Shelot v'Tshuvot, Melamed Lahoel, It's a beautiful, I have it at home. It's not that big. I have it back there in the back. I believe his sons like published it posthumously, and they wrote that their father always like taught them, you have to write every day. If you want to become a Torah scholar, write down Torah every day. When you write it, it sharpens it. It's a beautiful idea. When we were in Lublin, when I was in the Yeshiva Chachmei Lublin, Rav Meir Shapiro, the founder of Daf Yomi, that's how he's most famous. So Rav Meir Shapiro was quite an amazing person. Before, obviously, he found Daf Yomi. That was a very creative idea. He was in his 30s when he came up with that idea. He was a young, I don't want to say, God forbid, a schnook, but like in the rabbinic world, you're 30 years old, like nobody pays attention to you. And so my father always used to say, and it's true, if the Ger, the only reason Daf Yomi even began because the Ger Rebbe, who was the most popular Rebbe, was the most popular rabbinic figure in Poland. My understanding is 200,000 Jews. They weren't all Ger Hasidim like today. Ger, a Hasid means you're a real Hasid. They were all like looked up. The Ger Rebbe was like their leader. He was the biggest leader in Poland. So the Ger Rebbe on that year, 1923, Rosh Hashanah, according to Shema Barbit. Shema, he was learning about Shema. Brachot. So that's what got Daf Yomi. But Rav Meir Shapiro was a great innovator. He was a great, and the yeshiva Chachmei Lublin was the first modern yeshiva ever built. Volozhin, we think of Volozhin as the first modern yeshiva in a sense. Volozhin was the first modern yeshiva that wasn't local. It was the first international yeshiva. They brought students from around the world instead of learning with your local rabbi, and they raised money from around the world. But it wasn't. There wasn't a dormitory. It was old style. It wasn't a modern yeshiva in that sense. It was one room. Period. Rav Meir Shapiro built the yeshiva with the dormitory and the whole modern, and it should be nice amenities. It should not like some low level living, high level living for tourist college. Today it's a 4-star hotel. But anyways, why am I telling you all this? Maybe you find it interesting, maybe you don't. If you don't, you can let me know. But if you do, that's also nice. But the reason I'm telling you this is because Rav Meir Shapiro. So you go to the yeshiva, so they give you a schedule. Unfortunately, the yeshiva didn't last very long. Built in the early 30s, who knew how tragic. But so they have a whole schedule of date. Daf Yomi, of course, is part of the schedule. I mean, he's the founder of Daf Yomi. But he, at the last, I think, 45 minutes every night, you had to write down Chidushei Torah. They had like a schedule, like from 9:15 to 10. You write down what you learned today, a new insight. And he said, and if you don't have a new insight to write, then you have to write down a review of what you learned. But every student in the yeshiva had to write every single day for 40 minutes. It is a tremendous, you really gain a lot by that. So the Torah doesn't say to learn Torah. Yeah, you have to learn Torah. If you want to teach, you have to learn. But Torah says teach Torah. Teach Torah includes learning Torah. So that's Bishinantan levanecha. Teach your children. I see somebody pointing out Vegeta Yomam Balayla is in Yehoshua. So that's correct. The rabbis have a whole debate how to interpret that. We've mentioned in the past the one opinion, of course, day and night. You got to learn all the time. That's not really the opinion that we accept. The opinion is you have to learn a little at night and a little at day, and that can be fulfilled. That's exactly what I was alluding to before. That can be fulfilled by Shema in the morning, Shema at night. It also may be a bracha, like Rabbi Fine was mentioning last night. Pru'avu in the Torah is not originally written as a mitzvah, as a command. It's written as a blessing. That's Vegeta b'yom. You will be blessed to be able to study Torah day and night. And of course, here Vegeta doesn't mean to learn; it means to be involved. Lagia, to discuss whatever it could be. I always say when you learn Torah and then you go to work, that's also learning Torah. That's like I always say that's like theoretical physics and applied physics. That's why when you make Birchas Torah in the morning, you say we have to make a bracha. Torah is not just you have to make a special blessing that we can learn Torah. Beautiful. God has chosen us. We have a mitzvah to be engaged in Torah. So then I make that bracha at 7:30 in the morning at Minyan, and then I learn a little. I learn a drop. Then I go to work, and I come home at 8 o'clock at night, and I open up a sefer for half an hour. I don't make another bracha. If I eat an orange in the morning and then I don't eat an orange, I don't eat again for 12 hours, I have to make another bracha on the food. So why don't I have to make another bracha? Why don't I make a bracha every time I learn? Every time I eat a meal, I make another bracha. No, because when you were at work, that was also learning. That was when you learned in the base measures, that's applied physics. That is theoretical physics. When you go to work, that's applied physics. When you go in the business world, you know how many mitzvot there are in the business world? How to compete and how to hire workers and how to pay your worker on time and how to talk to people in competition and not to disparage others. Wow. The whole Torah is working. There are more mitzvot when you work. So it's not that we go to work and we're not learning Torah. That's also learning Torah. Listen, this is what it means to be a Torah Mada Jew. This is what it means, Torah Derech Eretz. That every aspect of life is part of Torah. Yes, some people reject that. They say only if you're mamish learning Torah. But I assume most people, anybody who's come to in class I'm giving, with sort of understands where we're coming from. That when you were I've been working with, I remember many years ago, Rabbi Saul Berman should be well. And I think he's still teaching at Stern. When he spoke first in Toronto, he mentioned that's one of the serious issues, that people disassociate work from learning. In other words, especially if you're taught your whole life that really the ideal is to learn nebuch. Some people have to go earn their living. They don't have a rich father-in-law, a rich father. Well, what can they do? They have to work. But really, they should be learning. So when they go to work, work is like a b'diavad. Work is like not so good. Okay, so they don't view it as a mitzvah. Where should you work? What are you talking about? That's an idea to make a kiddush Hashem. You go to work, you wear your kippah, and you're honest, and you shake your hands. We've discussed this many, many times. And your word is your bond. Wow, that's a great way. That's no greater teaching Torah, and that's a mitzvah to teach Torah. Non-Jews, Jews, everybody. You show what a Jew who believes in God, who believes in Torah acts. Amazing. So we learn Torah all day. Yes, there is an idea to learn applied physics, theoretical physics, to learn Torah and the base measures too, but in many ways, and obviously you read the Torah, everybody's going to work, and obviously that's the way life is, at least the way it used to be, the normal, that everybody went to work, and 1%, not 1%, 1/10 of 1% of the population sat in yeshiva, maybe 100th of 1%, I don't know what it was. The yeshivas in Europe, I think before the war, all the great yeshivas, Mir, Slobodka, all the great yeshivas had what? 2,000 students in them. Today, there are 20 yeshivas that have more than 2,000 students in them. Okay, let's go on. So that's you have to teach Torah. And then we discussed last week, your students are like your children. So I'll just mention very briefly, Ben Azai, right? Who's Ben Azai? Anybody? Anybody still with me? No. Somebody kind of know who Ben Azai is.
One of the four who went into the Pardesh.
Good. One of the four went into Pardesh. Good. And it didn't go well for him. One of the four who tried to understand the mystical vision of God. Only Rabbi Kiva came out normal. You have to know your level. You study Kabbalah, you become nuts, right? Right. The only special people, as Rabbi Kumar used to say, the only people who learn Kabbalah are truly amazing, righteous Talmidei Chachamim or nutcases. No, normal people don't learn Kabbalah. It's either you're a super genius or you're some whatever. Okay, leave that aside. Yes, he's one of the four who went to Pardes, right? Okay, who else was he? What else do we know about him, famously? Who are his kids? Tova, you don't know. You don't remember. Ben Azai didn't have any kids because he didn't marry. There is one opinion that he married Rabbi Akiva's daughter, I think, for one day, I believe. But Ben Azai didn't marry. And Ben Azai, I forget now what he said. He said something about having kids, and the rabbi said, doresh v'eino na'mekayim. You speak very nicely, the importance of children. But why didn't you have any children? He didn't get married. He refused to get married. It's against the law. It's against the Torah. So he says, what can I do? Nafshi chashka b'Torah. I love Torah. Nafshi chashka. I can't change diapers at 2:00 in the morning. I don't want to go shopping. I don't want to cook. I'm not interested in that stuff. You have a family. You got to spend time with your family. And then I don't want to worry about making a living. I just want to sit in the base measures and learn. Nafshi chashka b'Torah. I love Torah so much. No, is that good? Do we like Ben Azai?
No.
Right. So the Rambam says, and we know Ben Azai is part of our tradition. He's the, Rambam says, anybody who wants to learn Torah all day, ein biyado avon. Ein biyado avon doesn't mean it's good. He doesn't have a sin in his hands. He's not sinning. He's not sinning. We don't recommend it, but there are no Ben Azais alive today. Okay, let's make that straight. But in theory, Ben Azai. So what does that mean? So Rav Soloveitchik explained. In other words, a person says, I want to learn Torah. Says, so what's the purpose of having children? Why do we have children? So this right there, you need other people to teach this, psychologists, everything. But the original reason we have Torah is to populate the world. We don't need that anymore. The world is, I don't want to say it's overpopulated, maybe. Jews, it's not our problem, overpopulation. After what we've gone through, let other people worry about overpopulation. That's not our problem. We should worry about lots of things, but I don't think a Jew has a responsibility to worry about the world overpopulation when there are 12 million of us. Okay, anyways, but that was the original reason. But we don't need that mitzvah anymore. And that mitzvah was given to Adam. When the Torah was given, not the only, I don't misunderstand me, but one of the key purposes of having children is to pass on Torah from generation to generation. So Rav Soloveitchik explained, one who is so loving Torah, we don't have people like this, and he teaches Torah to other people. So that's a partial fulfillment of Puruvu. He's passing on Torah. That's a major component. It's not the only component, but it's a major component. So it's enough of a component that you're not a sinner. If you're mamish learning Torah day and night, means you can't watch the make-believe, so you can't, can't take a break. You have no time for anything, just Talmud Torah. So that's what how Rav Soloveitchik explained. Ein biyadu av. And we say that, listen, unfortunately, many people can't have children. I've mentioned that time, the list of 20th century Torah giants who didn't have children is unbelievable. The Chazon Ish and the Lubavitcher Rebbe and the Chama Leibowitz and the Sridei Eish and Shaul Lieberman. Who else am I forgetting? The Satmar Rebbe had a daughter who died, but he didn't have any descendants. One by one, some of the greatest Torah sages of the 20th century, the Or Sameach, did not have children. I don't believe the Or Sameach had any children. He also may have had a daughter who died. I had to check. But basically, no descendants from scores of the greatest Torah scholars. Whatever, lo machshavotay machshavotechem, it's the same Haftorah. Our thoughts are not God's thoughts. These things happen. Not everybody's blessed with children. So if you're not blessed with children, that's what the pasuk in Yeshaya, we say that Ko Amar Shel Masarisim, Shimu Shabbatot. I don't remember the whole verse now. We say it on all the fast days. We tell the people, we call them a Yad Vashem. That's why Yad Vashem is Yad Vashem. Natati biyadam Yad Vashem. I'll give them a Yad Vashem. That's a pasuk in Yeshaya. Obviously, it's a beautiful, a tragic, but a beautifully appropriate name for those who were killed in the Holocaust. So they're going to get a Yad Vashem. And it says, if you support Torah, Machzikim Bebriti, you strengthen our covenant, you can do a partial fulfillment, approval. If you can't have biological children, so you can adopt. But there's no obligation to adopt, but you can adopt, or you support other people. You support Torah learning, support other people. So that's a partial fulfillment. So that's what the Gemara says. These are our students. So when the rabbis say banecha means you have to love your students like your children. Well, and that's your students. You have to have love for your students. A teacher who doesn't love his students should not be a teacher. It's not always easy to love your students. It's not always easy to love your children, but we put up with more. They're our children. Your students, I teach in chat. So if a teacher doesn't, it's 1,300 kids in 4 grades. So I teach rabbinics, grade 10. So there are 10 sections in rabbinics, grade 10. There are more to 10. So if a student doesn't like me, he goes to the administration and want to change teachers. And depending if early in the year, they'll change it. No, if I go to the administration, I don't like this student, I want to kick him out. It doesn't work that way. We have no ability to kick out our students. They can kick out our teachers. A teacher has to love all their students. But that's what we say. So if you support, vishinantam v'necha elu tamidecha, these are your children. So those who don't have, and even if you do have biological children, don't have a partial fulfillment. What Ben Azai did, which wasn't really right, the rabbis aren't happy with it, is he did it voluntarily. He did it voluntarily, so it wasn't really great. Okay, every rule has an exception. Mark Shapiro always says, if you go on any of our trips, he always says once, and he always will say, Rabbi Kelman has heard me say this many times, but it's true. He says, why is the first mitzvah of the Torah Puruvu? Why? I think it's such a beautiful insight. Why is the first mitzvah of the Torah Puruvu? Because you know what? If it wasn't, you would have righteous rabbis saying, like the Catholic Church said, you're allowed to have children, but really the ideal is not to have children. How can you have children? That's not it's not a Torah way of life. That's how a priest have to be celibate. So that would have for sure crept into Judaism. So the Torah, to get rid of that idea right away, the first mitzvah in Torah said, actually, I think it's such a brilliant and beautiful insight, and so true if you think about it. So the Torah now turned into what might have been a push toward asceticism and celibacy, which you did have a little bit, which you have in Ben Azai. That would have been widespread. So the Torah came to nullify that. Okay, let's go on. You should teach your children, just very quickly. I see I'm not going to go as far as I plan to, but what else is new? Teach your children. I just want to point out for half a second. We mentioned last week that if there's a lost object of your father and a lost object of your teacher, you return your teachers first, because your father brings you to this world and your teacher brings you to the world to come. So you see already, that's also Puruvu. Like, more important than Puruvu is to teach Torah. You see that in the Mishnah. Your father brings you this world, that's beautiful, but your teacher brings you to the next world. That's assuming your father's a total ignoramus. If your father teaches you even less than your teacher, you have to do it. And then we pointed out, of course, that this doesn't apply today unless you live in who knows where. If the father pays tuition, the father is the teacher. The fact that the teacher does the actual teaching is irrelevant. It's the father who pays for it. The payer is the greater one. So the poskim all point out that law in the Mishnah only applies if you have somebody who teaches your kid 4 hours a day, every day for 5 years, and he doesn't charge a penny. Yeah, his lost object comes before your father, but that's, nobody lives like that. So it's always going to be your father who's going to be first, because that's or your mother. I'm just and the Torah was always the father's obligation to support the wife, etc., etc. So the father has to pay. So of course that assumes that you're paying teachers, as I'm sure many of you know, and the Rambam was the greatest advocate of this. You're not supposed to get paid for teaching Torah. Mani b'chinam afata b'chinam. The same way, God gives Torah, Moshe gives Torah for free. You too have to teach Torah for free. You're not allowed to teach. And the Rambam, that's why the Rambam became a medical doctor. His brother, if your family wants to support you, is one thing, but you're not allowed to take communal funds. You're not going to get paid for learning from the community. The Rambam says one who does loses his share in the world to come. We show those words once for it's a little bit, your hair stands on edge. The Rambam says a person who's going to sit in Kollel and thinks the community should support them is a chilul Hashem, is a desecration of God's name, and he loses his share in the world to come. So that's the Rambam didn't like the Kollel system, that's for sure. The Rambam has another thing to be Shevet Levi. We're not going to get into the whole and understand the Rambam. But okay, we don't follow the Rambam. Just because the Rambam said that doesn't mean any Tom, Dick, and Harry can learn in Kol. But the Rambam is very sharp. And when the Rambam's brother drowned unfortunately in a business trip, boating accident, whatever, ship capsized. So the Rambam had no means of support. So he became a doctor. What else are you going to do? Going to become a doctor, and that's how he supported himself. And he writes about it. That was most of his time. Then he became the doctor to the Caliph in Egypt. Became the best doctor in the world. Right? If you don't become the president's doctor if you're some third-rate medical student. Anyway, so that's, you're not allowed to get paid for learning. No, we don't generally follow it, but I'll just point out, Moshe Feinstein points out that it's forbidden for a Jew to teach Torah without getting paid. Wow. So I don't know exactly if that means, I hope it doesn't mean, because I would violate this halakha. I give a shiur every Shabbos afternoon. I don't get paid. So hopefully I'm not in violation of any halakha. I mean, if somebody would volunteer to pay me, I would take the money, but they don't pay me. I give them the shul, hopefully I'm not in violation. I assume if you have another means of support, it means a full-time Torah teacher. It means a lawyer who's making $400,000 a year, an investment banker or whatever, and he gives a shiur once a week. I don't think he has to get paid. Maybe he shouldn't get paid. But for Moshe, you're a guy's going to be going teaching. You don't get paid. So first of all, it's very practical. As Rabbi Riskin always said, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. You got to pay people. Got to pay people, got to pay a living wage. That's one of the big problems. We can't attract enough people into education, even though salaries are up. You make more money as a lawyer, as an accountant. No. But anyway, so that's what Rav Moshe writes. It's the Yetzer Hara. A Jew who says they're going to teach for free. It's so interesting. That's a total reversal of the Rambam. But that's okay. That's how Jewish life works. Okay, let's go on. When do we begin to teach Torah? When does the mitzvah begin? Vishinanta levanecha. You have to teach your children. Your children can be your biological children, please God, and also your students, and everybody can be a student. Every opportunity, as we'll see in a moment, is an opportunity to teach Torah. But when does the technical mitzvah to teach your children begin?
As soon as they speak.
As soon as they speak. Very good. And when do you teach them?
Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe.
Okay, so let's take a look. Very good. Thank you. We'll take a look at the Gemara here. So this is a Gemara in Sukkah, by the way. I'll just say something which I always like to say. I listened to two. I was just listening to the ones I missed. Rabbi Blau gave a shiur on the Agadata, and how Agadata works. And one of the shiur give, which is I've mentioned a number of times, Agadata is very precise. It's not some tangent. The rabbis were tired and they started telling like they go off on a tangent. It's all related. It was edited with great precision. That's why the stories of the destruction are in Gittin, etc. So what Masechet has the mitzvah of chinuch, the mitzvah to train our children? What Masechet in Shas would be the Masechet you would think we would put all the laws of training children, and the story, where would that go? Anybody want to guess? It's so beautiful after the fact. I believe me, but it's not something you would normally think about or they would normally teach. But if you sit back and you take this approach that the Gemara was edited with great precision. What Masechet in Shas has chinuch? Somebody guess, please, and it's okay if you're wrong. You have a 1 in 37 chance of being right. So that's not so good. No, somebody? Zev, can I pick on you?
Sukkahs.
Very good. How did you know that?
Because you showed us sukkahs before.
Oh, very good. You cheated. Why is it in Masechet Sukkah? Basukot teshu shivat yamim. Kol ezrach Yisrael yeshu basukot. Leman yedu dorotechem. That your children should know for all generations. The mitzvah of chinuch is directly said in the Torah by Sukkos. Leman yedu dorotechem ki b'sukkot hoshafti epnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. So because I believe that's why to know that your children should know, it doesn't say that on Pesach. You might think Pesach, that would be a really good guess. Psachim, that would be a good guess. And I'm sure there's some there too. But Leman Yedu, the mitzvah of chinuch is by Sukkah. You can also say Sukkah represents the temporary nature of life. A Sukkah is a temporary hut, and learning is permanent, so thematically. But yes, it is in Masechet Sukkah, so now we can go back. But I find that's very, very beautiful, and how the great precision. So it's a mitzvah 42a. So it's based on the Mishnah. Okay, whatever. It says the Katan Hayodei L'Nanei Chayav B'Lulav. A child who knows how to shake the lulav. What do you mean he knows how to shake the lulav? Kid shakes the lulav before he knows. He sees it on the counter. A 2-year-old kid, he throws the etrog and he breaks the pitam. He knows how to shake the lulav. Okay, so the Gemara says like this: Katana Yodei L'Nanei. A child who knows how to shake the lulav. So what this means, actually, okay, I'll come back to this. If he knows how to dress himself, if his mother's dressing him, he doesn't wear tzitzis. But a kid who knows how to get dressed, what age do kids know how to get dressed by? I don't remember. Tova, what age do kids know how to get dressed by? 4? I don't know. 3, they're not getting dressed on their own. I don't know what age they are. Okay, lishmor tefillin, to guard tefillin. Aviv lokeach lo tefillin. What age is that? That's probably either never or 30 or 20. It's not 12 and a half. It's not 13, right? That's why most people, so in some circles, they only put on tefillin when a kid has bar mitzvah, because what can you do? Some people put it on a month before. Some people put the week before. Tefillin, though, that's very hard. It's very hard to know how to properly do tefillin. So we don't do lots of chinuch. Tzitzis, who cares? So the kid rolls in the mud. Doesn't really matter. There's nothing intrinsically holy about the tzitzis. Yodei ledaber. Avim melamdo Torah, ukriyat Shema. Yeah, teach him Shema. So there's Torah Tziva Torah Mahi, Amar Rav Nuna, Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, Mora Shekilet Yaakov, Kriyat Shema Pasuk Rishon. So it's funny why, correct, people say Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe a lot, but they don't always know the Shema part. The Torah links Shema and Vaya im Shemo. What's the difference? Why do we teach Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe? Why is that so important? Again, it's transmission from one generation to the next. Torah Tziva Morasha. Morasha. A morasha, it means more than, it means like a legacy. An inheritance you can blow. Your parents leave you $1 million. You can spend it how you like. A legacy you have to pass on. I don't know if that's the right word. Maybe a better word, but morasha is not a Yerusha. It's connected, of course. But so Torah Tzivalenu morasha kilet Yaakov. You want to teach children on the next generation. So you teach them about the importance of teaching the next generation. Torah Tzivalenu Moshe morasha. What you're getting, you're born into this family. We have a 4,000-year-old tradition dating back in grandparents and great-grandparents. Rabbi Akiva and the Vilna Gaon. I'm going backwards, but whatever. The Vilna Gaon, Rav Soloveitchik, so much time he talked about being part of a Masorah, being part of, the Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, the whole more Moshe Kibo Torah Misinim, Masorah Yeshua, Yeshua's Ganim, Ganim Levin, the Vilna Sheikh Knesset, Agdola, and Kibel and Shmaya Talion Kiblumehem and Hill of Hashamai Kiblumehem. Each one receives the Torah from the generation before. So that's what we teach children: the importance of, even though you don't know what it is yet, pass on our tradition. And then Shema. Shema is the declaration. Okay, God, we pass on our faith. Now, what do you mean Katan Hayadel and Aneya? I mean, it's what Vishinant Levanach. This is very important lesson in Chinuch. What do they say? Bad practice makes perfect. It's not true. Practice does not make perfect. What does practice make? Practice makes habits, repetitive. Perfect practice makes perfect. When you practice the wrong thing, which if you learn something incorrectly, we all know that. You can think of things you learned as a kid incorrectly, and you never do it right because that's how I always did it. So it's very important that when you do chinuch, you do it right. It's better not to teach than to teach incorrectly. Katan hayadel lulav. When a child knows how to shake the lulav, you don't have to shake the lulav to fulfill the mitzvah. As soon as you pick up, that's why we pick it up with the pitam backwards, because the second you pick it up, you fulfill the mitzvah. If you fulfill the mitzvah, I can't make a bracha anymore. So we pick it up in a way so we don't fulfill the mitzvah. What about shaking? That shaking is a nice thing. Hodu Lashem ki tov ki liolam chasta. It's very nice, but the world won't come to an end. Nothing will happen if you don't shake the lulav. But the proper way is to shake the lulav. I don't want to teach a kid to take a lulav unless he knows where in Hallel, where, and he doesn't shake on God's name, and he goes this way and that way. If he doesn't know all that, I don't want him to take the lulav. Because he'll say, as a kid, I took the lulav as shaking. Yeah, that's at the old man, that's later. And it won't become important to him. So you only start chinuch when it can be done properly. That's why we don't make kiddush on Yom Kippur. By the way, in shul, why can't the katam? Let's say somebody has to eat on Yom Kippur. It's a machloket, but many people assume if you have to eat, like 1848, Rabbi Solanter got one into shul. There was a cholera epidemic, and people didn't want to eat it Yom Kippur. So Rabbi Solanter got up on the bima, he made kiddush, and he ate. Okay, other people want to eat then. If the rabbi's eating, that's what we always say in Pikuach Nefesh. The rabbi should be the one to do it because people they're too frum. But no, the rabbi has to do it. So if you on Yom Kippur you should make kiddush if the person has to eat. So why don't we make kiddush every Yom Kippur chinuch to show and give the wine to an 8-year-old kid? Because the kid will grow up. He'll remember, not so important. I used to drink as a kid. I think the rabbis had a deep psychological insight. Even though you tell people things, everybody, you can know a lot of things. Knowledge isn't enough to do action. We're creatures of habit, even though we know it's wrong. We know this. So the mitzvah of chinuch only begins to apply when the person can do the mitzvah 100% completely. And that story is the first opening story in Masechet Sukkah. If you know, by Helene Hamalka, the Gemara tells a whole story there. We won't go into all the details. The rabbis, when they're trying to prove how high, there's a debate. What's the maximum height of a sukkah? So the rabbis said, it must be, the Rabbi Yehuda wanted to bring a proof. It can be as high as you want from the sukkah of Helene Hamalka because it was really, really high. And the rabbi said, no, you can't bring a proof anyways, but the whole discussion is the people point out, I don't understand what's going on. We're talking about kids in the sukkah. A kid doesn't have to sleep in the sukkah. A kid doesn't. So who cares if the sukkah is high or low? It's just like, it looked like a sukkah. So you see from that Gemara, that's what the commentaries point out, that it's not enough to just do like a fake mitzvah. That, in other words, now I'm going to get it, like they buy the 2-year-old kid like a fake lulav and etrog. So I don't know, maybe a 2-year-old kid a fake lulav and etrog, but it's not really right. You have to. The kid doesn't have to do the mitzvah of lulav till he's ready, till he knows, and then he buy him a real lulav. But to buy like a a chinuch set that is pasul. I don't know. Where I come from, I don't think that is an appropriate thing. I think it's a waste of money. But okay, when he knows, it's not. That's it. That gets to a question: when do you bring a kid to shul? It's not an easy question. On the one hand, you want to regulate kids. They should remember as kids, I always went to shul. I ran around, made noise. There's something to be said for that. I do hear that. On the other hand, they run around, they make noise, and that's what they do when they become adults in shul too. So it's that some shuls don't allow kids in. Maybe you have a junior. I don't know how to solve that issue. But anyways, chinuch v'shinantam levanecha. You do chinuch when chinuch can be done appropriately. Okay, let's move on. And that's why tefillin, it's not right for an 11-year-old kid to wear tefillin, because tefillin are very hard. That's why we lower tefillin. Really, we're supposed to wear tefillin all day. And today, just like Rav Moshe flipped the Rambam, says that you have to take money. So even though you're supposed to wear tefillin all day, today we say that's wrong to wear tefillin all day. Who are they? A big knacker? You can wear tefillin all day. Yeah, you're thinking about God. Get out of here. Give me a break. So we hope for the half an hour it takes to daven shachrit in the morning, you can put on tefillin. Without getting into it, I don't want to get a whole discussion later. I'm happy to. But that's the reason we frown upon women putting on tefillin. We really frown upon men putting on tefillin. What can we do? We have no choice. It says in Torah, men have to put on tefillin. So, okay, we'll put it on for a few minutes a day. But we don't encourage extra putting on tefillin. So why should women put on tefillin? Again, I'm not getting into their exception. I'm not discussing it on that angle, but I'm saying that's why the approach. A woman wants to wear tzitzis, no problem. Today, I don't know why, why women don't wear tzitzis today is very strange. I mean, if a woman comes into shul wearing a tallis in your Orthodox shul, unless you have a very open liberal shul, she's going to get a lot of stares, and she's probably going to get somebody coming over her to tell her to take it off. I think it's very sad, of course. I'm not telling anyone to wear a tallis. There are in other words, a woman comes to shul to your shofar. She doesn't have to shofar. A woman doesn't have to shake the lulav. Now, this guy's not for now. Mitzvah seisha is mangrama. Those are classic cases. Mitzvah say the three classic cases: sukkah, lulav, and shofar. Women don't have to do. It's very beautiful if they do. They get a mitzvah. It's wonderful, but they don't have to. They make a bracha. But we encourage women. We even go, the Baal Tokea will go to an elderly woman's house who couldn't come to shul, and we'll make a bracha just for her, even though she doesn't have to do it. So we very much encourage that. So why don't we do that by talis? By tefillin, I understand. By tefillin, yes, I understand. Why don't we encourage women to put on a talis? They don't have to, but why not? Anybody know? Tova, I'll pick on you again. Since you never wore a talis, why? The Ramah gives a really strange answer. It's like unbelievable. It says, you know why? Because men don't have to wear a talis either. So men are like, and that way it's two steps removed. Even why doesn't a man have to wear a talis? How come man doesn't
wear a beged with
because you don't have to wear a piece of clothing with four corners. You have to put on tefillin. I have to take a lulav. I can't say I don't want to take. I have to eat matzah. I have to sit in the sukkah. I have to daven. I don't have to put on tzitzis. I don't have to. How many people here built a fence around their house? You don't have to build a house with a flat roof so you can put a fence. I imagine not one person here has a fence around their roof. Am I wrong? Please tell me. I'd like to be wrong. I imagine not one. It's a mitzvah in the Torah. This week's parsha, we're going to read it tomorrow. You have to build a fence. How come we don't fulfill it? How many people have gone bird hunting? Get long life. A long life if you go bird hunting and you send away the mother bird, right? Also tomorrow, anybody go bird hunting? I've never gone bird hunting. Nechama Leibowitz point out ki karei. If it happens, ki karei. If you happen to be walking in the street and you see a bird, okay, you have to do the mitzvah. You have to run to the mitzvah. The only mitzvah you have to run to is, there's only one mitzvah you have to run to, really run to. Bakei shalom v'ratvehu. That's me. Shechapes chaim. Right? It's that pasuk. Bakei shalom v'ratvehu. Seek peace and run after it. That's the medrash. That's your run. If you happen to have a flat roof built on, so some mitzvah we like to do. So why? So we run after tzitzis too because we want to do it. So we buy ourselves a special four-corner garment and we put on tzitzis. But you don't really have to do that. Even the men. So if the men don't have to do it, so let's start with the women. That's what it says in the Ramah, in the Shulchan Aruch. That's why. So women don't do it. The implication, of course, if they want to do it, what's the problem? Good to hate, but just they didn't do it. Obviously, today would be different, but that's going way beyond the confines of our shir now. But we will have to talk about right? How the Gemara says, "V'limada tamatam epinechem." Here, the Gemara does say "benechem" means your sons, not your daughters. "Benechem v'lo benotechem." That's what we have to discuss, and we've alluded to in other occasions. Okay, but let's go on. Yeah.
Did you say if you have a flat roof today, you don't need a fence around
No,
it?
I didn't say that. I say you don't have to build a flat roof so that
okay,
you
I
can do the
misunderstood.
mitzvah of fence. No, you know, anybody builds a flat roof, and you'd be nuts. It's probably against the law in Canada because the snow would. There was a number of years ago in Shamwell, a few people were killed. Rahman al-Litzlan, that a mall collapsed. The snow, they have a flat roof. So I think when you build a flat roof, you got to put like heat sensors on it. So when it gets ice in Toronto, we get that around here. So it'll collapse. So all our roofs are built like this. You go to Israel, Israel people have flat roofs, and it's beautiful mitzvah. I assume you make a bracha on it. I don't even know. Why wouldn't you? I would assume you make a bracha, unless you say it's a mitzvah ben adam lechaveiro. I don't know, actually, I have to look. And then my assumption is you would make a bracha on it. But anyways, generally, we do mitzvah if there's certain mitzvah that are obligations, and there's certain mitzvah that happenstance. If you find a lost object, there's no mitzvah to go looking for a lost object. Rav Moshe Feinstein goes so far. This already, I'm not sure I agree. Who am I? But I think there can be other approaches. Rav Moshe Feinstein goes so far to say that applies to the mitzvah of tzedakah. There's no mitzvah to make money to give tzedakah. It says if you make money, you give tzedakah. So that. There are certain people, I think everybody has to know what their role in life is. That's how Rav Soloveitchik always used to talk. The first mitzvah in Torah to be creative, have children. So if you're an artist, if you have creative, become an artist. You're an engineer, you have great talents in science, great in poetry. Everybody should use their creative talents. That's where Soloveitchik developed this theme so beautifully. Everybody has certain talents. Certain people have talents in Torah, can explain Torah beautifully, can write beautifully. Jonathan Sachs had this beautiful talent that he was going to use in philosophy, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe convinced him to use his talents for Torah, right? That's why he was so close to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Lubavitcher Rebbe, he came to America, the famous story, he was like 20 years old was it Oxford or Cambridge, and he came from a not wealthy family at all, and he traveled to North America to meet with Rav Soloveitchik and the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, "What are you doing at Cambridge for the students?" And he said, "What are you talking about?" And that changed his whole life, that he's going to devote his life and to use your talents. Everybody has to use their talents where they're best suited. But not everybody's talents are suited to become teachers. Most people's talents are not suited that way. So some people are suited to make a lot of money. I really, some people are put on this earth to make a lot of money, so they could be part of the giving pledge, so they can give a lot of sukkah. That's their role in life. But I have to learn Torah for. Let them support 1,000 people learning Torah. Let them make $1 billion and give it away. What did I talk? There's so much. So I find Rav Moshe's tshuva. I don't know. I find it a little bit, but Rav Moshe. So far. That mitzvot, most mitzvot are not that you have to do them. If you're in a situation where there rises, you have to do it. You don't even have to have a mezuzah. You don't have to live in a house. I can live in a tent, and or whatever. I can live in a shack less than 4 amot by 4 amot. You can live in certain places that don't require a mezuzah. But okay. But anyway, so that's what he says. So men don't have to wear a talis at all, but we do, because we show our love of mitzvah. But the women don't do that. Okay. Anyways, let's go on. I see it's already getting late. Okay. Okay. So when do you have to learn Torah, teach Torah? When you're at home, when you're walking on the street, and when you're going down and going to bed. So basically, what we're saying is Torah life, Torah learning, or really this is part of the mitzvah of loving God. Remember, this is how we demonstrate our love of God. We read his biography, God's biography. God wrote an autobiography. That's how the Ramban explained the Torah. So by studying Torah, that's a part of the mitzvah of loving God. We mentioned that's why Reb Lichtenstein said, even that part of the mitzvah that women are not obligated in Talmud Torah, and they are obligated in all the practical aspects, even that part they may have to do because of the mitzvah of loving God. Requires one to learn Torah, and that a woman is obligated in. But that's so you have to love God in all our positions. So we don't have time to develop this now. I guess we'll have to pick up, please God, in another month or so. But the idea that we learn Torah in very, very different ways. But what I guess I'll land off with the idea of of B'shivtecha b'lechtecha b'derech. Well, b'lechtecha b'derech, it means when you're walking on the way, right? So what it means like this, I always say, I teach contemporary halakha, school's beginning a week Tuesday, right? It's almost Labor Day. So when I worked as an accountant, summer, winter, who cared? It didn't matter. But when you work as a teacher, back as a kid, you get the summer again, so my summer begins on June 30th, ends the day after Labor Day. That's how it works. Okay. So next Tuesday, we start school. So I start to have a class in contemporary halakha. So most of these kids have not learned very much halakha in their life. Some know a little bit, So I asked them, what does halakha mean? What does halakha mean?
Where you walk, the way you walk.
So why is halakha Jewish law? Why do we use the term halakha for Jewish law? Why don't we say mishpat? Din. I'm taking the word din. Let's go learn din. In elementary schools, they actually call it that, right? Dinim, right? I think when you're young, we're going to learn dinim, but that's not, it's interesting, actually. It's more accurate, sort of. Why do we call dinim halakha?
Because it's a way of life. It's how you go.
Right. It's a way of life. It's the path we walk on. That's
right.
Okay. That's normal.
It's the same in Islam. It's Sharia. It's the same concept. And I'm sure it is in other religions as well.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, we're okay. I also think it should be very natural that when we walk, we don't think. We just walk naturally. You don't have to concentrate when you walk. Yeah. Now try running and talking at the same time. That's much harder to do. Right. But walking and talking, nobody finds hard to do. That's very natural. So I think it's the idea that halakha, Jewish love of God, should be natural. Mitzvot should be natural. Now, this raises a whole interesting question, the interplay between kavanah and natural. In other words, Chaim Soloveitchik, what I urged earlier in Rupture and Reconstruction, in that article, when he talks about the transition from, justifying all traditions. I think I finished what I was saying. That was the way of the Aruch HaShulchan, where the Mishnah Berurah has a very different approach. The Mishnah Berurah's approach is no. This is what the text saying, we're going to change our tradition. They said that could succeed after the Holocaust because people lost their connection to the past. So it was very easy to recreate new traditions based on text, as opposed to justifying old traditions, which may not have jived with the text, but that's what people did. That's his theme of this fantastic article. And but in the article, he discussed it like, you do mitzvah naturally. Like you do when I put on tzitzis in the morning, do I think about putting on tzitzis that I'm wrapping myself with God and my blue thread thing? I don't think about that. So is that good or bad? So on the one hand, it's bad, but on the other hand, it's good. And that's, I don't know where to draw the line, but I think that's we study Torah. It's natural. It's not something I have to think about. It's what I do. There's something beautiful that I just do it. It's just, I get up in the morning, I tell my students, it's like you wouldn't leave your house without underwear or socks. So I don't leave my house without tzitzis. It's just what I do. I walk out of the bathroom and my lips start moving. It's like autopilot. Asher Yitzhar, because I always like to say Asher Yitzhar in the classroom for the kids to learn it. But half the time I forget because I have to consciously remind myself, don't say Asher Yitzhar when you walk out of the bathroom, because it's like autopilot. I don't think about it. So I'm not concentrating God who created what the beauty of creation and so beautiful our body works. It's just, I mumble it. But so I think this is a tension that I think the Torah purposely places this tension. In other words, I think this is a proper tension. I don't think it's wrong. Yes, mitzvah tzricha kavana on a certain level. That itself is a debate. But what does that mean exactly? I mean, and what mitzvot does it apply to? So there is an idea that mitzvot should be b'lechtecha b'derech, just as we're walking, we aren't thinking about it, just what we do. And there's something very beautiful about that. They become habitual. On the other hand, if it's just rote habit and there's no meaning, it is rote habit and has no meaning. And that's not good. So we'll have to pick up. You can think about that over the next month. Maybe it'll come up over the machzor when we talk about the themes. These are themes that are universal. Well, are doubling. But anyways, let's just do a quick review, and then I'll take any questions. So we talked about what did we talk about? We talked about Vishinantam, the Vanecha, to teach our children. We talked about the idea that the Rabbeinu Tam reinterpreting it, what the mitzvah means, and often that's what communities do. That's what great religious authorities do. When communities are doing things that are not based on the actual text, we reinterpret, we justify, we give excuses, etc. That's a tradition. You can think about that, what that means, but that is a long established tradition. The Balei Hatos did this all the time, and we justify practices of observant Jews. We never want to say observant Jews are cheating. That's what Chaim Soloveitchik said has changed a little bit in the post-World War II generation, and the transition from the Aruch HaShulchan being the leading posek to the Mishnah Berurah being the leading posek. But anyways, you talked about teaching your children for free. We don't have free anymore. That's wrong. It's because we got to pay. You get what you pay for. We talked about Ben Azai. Children are students. You can partially fulfill the mitzvah. Those who can't have children, we don't understand God's ways, but there are other ways to fulfill the mitzvah, to support Torah, to support others, to give tzedakah. In general, that's Yad Vashem. Tov mi banim ubimnot. Remember the pasuk in Yeshayahu, right? Natati lachem Yad Vashem. I'll give you a hand and a name. These are people. Kol marsham l'sarisim. God is talking to people who can't have children. I'll give you a Yad Vashem. Tov mi banim ubibanot. Better than children. A person who supports, who teaches Torah, just have biological children who waste away. That's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to make this world a better place. And you can sometimes people who don't have children have extra time to make this world a better place. So when people don't have children, they have other roles in life. That's was Yaakov's, again, this is not the review anymore, but that was why Yaakov got mad at Rachel. Rachel said, bring me children to Yaakov, ayin meitani, and if I don't have children, I'm dead, I'm worthless. And Yaakov got very angry. No, that's a terrible thing. Nechama Leibowitz didn't have any children. She had an amazing life. She did tremendous things, more skuyot than any of us here, right? So the fact that everybody has their role in life, and that's why I kind of disagree with Rav Moshe. Some people's role in life is to make a lot of money, and to use that, not to make money for the sake of making money, to make money for other purposes. The problem is Ben Azai did that voluntarily. So that the rabbis weren't so thrilled about, but okay, what can you do? Some people are meshuk a little bit, I said, some people have issues. We tell an LGBT person, don't get married. That's a terrible thing to recommend a gay person to marry a girl. It's inappropriate. It's terrible for everybody, right? So there's certain people who can't get married. That's whatever. Then we have to figure out what to do. It's not simple. It's not a good situation, but that's life. So they weren't happy with Ben Azai talking. Then we talked about the mitzvah of chinuch that applies only when you can do things properly. If you can't do the mitzvah properly, better not to do it, because we're creatures of habit. Perfect practice makes perfect, not practice makes perfect. And therefore, we have to do the best we can. And Torah should be natural. Halacha is natural. It's the path that we go on. But just like we walk, we don't have to think. So that's very much how we should do it. And of course, we teach our children when they know how to speak. That's when chinuch starts. Torah tziva Moshe. Torah is an inheritance. So we teach or a legacy. So that's what we teach our children. And of course, Shema, we pointed out, I think, this very beautiful idea that the mitzvah of chinuch is in Masechet Sukkah, because it's Masechet Sukkah. That's Lema Yedu Dorotechem. Okay, let's see if there are questions. What about encouraging 21st century Jewish people to engage every Sunday, Friday in person or digital cohort studying, discussing, learning from a rabbi, as we are with? Yeah, that's what we do. Sure, encouraging, of course. We get to Yomam Valayla. We discuss Vishna V'necha. There's applied physics and theoretical physics, right? Okay. Hergel Nasa Teva, right? So some of that is good, right? If you learn the wrong way to do something, it becomes habit. That's exactly what we were saying. Thank you for that. Why doesn't a woman have to hear shofar, right? It's a mitzvah to say Shez Mangrama. All women do hear shofar, and Cambridge. Okay, right. I said, okay, thank you. Yes, in practice, women hear shofar. It's very interesting. Is it I think I once mentioned Tzvi Soar, I think it was him. He mentioned many years ago, the first was anybody at the first, Jofa conference? Where was it? 1999, I think, the first Jewish, or what's it called? Jewish Orthodox Feminist Alliance Blue Greenberg. So they did their first conference. Jofa, woman, feminist, Orthodox, so they had their first conference, and I didn't go, but they had like 2,000 people in New York. So I listened to the tapes all days and cassettes. So I mentioned one. So one of the speakers had a very interesting theory. I haven't heard any great rabbinic authority picking up on this, but it was very interesting. He said that if let's say women today all hear shofar, everyone goes to your shofar. Any religious women don't hear shofar. Everybody goes to your shofar. Thank God. So women have basically taken on the obligation, like Mariv. There's no obligation to daven Mariv, but we have to daven Mariv. The Gemara says we have to daven Mariv because we've taken it as an obligation. It wasn't obligatory originally, but we've made it obligatory. So now we're obligated to daven Mariv. So he wanted to make that argument that women have taken upon the obligation to blow shofar, and now it's become obligatory. So that's not so radical. That's not it's makes sense. And I think in many ways everybody would agree with that on a certain level. Depends what you mean by the word obligatory. Everybody would agree a woman should hear. No one's going to women. Why do you have to hear shofar? Your exam. No one would say that. But he says once women are obligatory, so then you can have a woman balat tokeya. Why can't the woman blow shofar for men? A woman can say kiddush for a man, that we know. Maybe it's not common, but it's absolutely permissible. And even great Rabbanim, I mentioned Rav Aaron Soloveitchik recommended that as one of the ways to compromise. When Hillel in Chicago at the university, so they're having a Friday night meal. So you have Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, going to eat together. It's very nice. So, always the Reform field, they're always compromising. The Orthodox always demand more. Got to be this, got to be that, and the Reform always compromising. So they said, fine, we'll agree, but we insist the women say Kiddush. So I heard this from a person that was there. So they went to ask Rav Aaron Soloveitchik many years ago, and what to do. The Orthodox students, Rav Aaron Soloveitchik said, yeah, let the woman make Kiddush, no problem. We don't generally do that, but a woman is obligated. It's a way, this is a great posek. Peace, to bring people together. That's what I mentioned last week on the light rail. We should have a non-Jew drive the light rail, make it free on Shabbos. You have to know when to compromise. You have to know what part of the halacha to do. So so a woman can make kiddush for a man, but a woman can't blow shofar for a man because she's not obligated. But if you say she's taken upon herself the obligation, no, you could say that and still say she can't blow. So anyways, I just point that out as an interesting idea. But women today take shofar very seriously. And remember, there is an opinion in Jewish thought that a volunteer is on a higher level than someone who's obligated. Jewish law in the end really doesn't accept that opinion because, when we have to do something, it's harder. But the Talmud originally did think there was an opinion that a volunteer, which is our natural instinct, obviously a volunteer is greater. They don't have to do it and they do it. So that's a higher level. On a certain level, that is true. So you could argue that a woman who hears shofar, if you take that approach, it's even better than a man because she doesn't have to, and yet she goes out of her way. So that shows the woman's greater love of mitzvot than for men. Okay, anyways, that's just an idea. You can do with it what you like. Okay, I think that's it. Any other questions? Okay, Monday, Benny Gesundheit begins his new series. And please God, like I say, next week we'll talk on the Machzor, and that's it. I'll send out the information on our September. Yes. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so it says Gadol HaMitzuveh va'oseh Mimei Lo Mitzuveh.
Right, correct. That's how we conclude. That Gemara began though with the opposite conclusion. The Gemara says Rabbi Chanina, I think, says Rav Shesha said, whoever tells me a blind person doesn't have to do mitzvot, I'm going to throw a party, because they were blind and they did mitzvot anyway. So obviously they're getting greater reward because they're not obligated. And then they heard what Rabbi Chanina said that no, Gadol HaMitzuvah, the one who's commanded, gets a great word. So he said, if you tell me a blind person has to do mitzvot, then I'll throw a big party. And the commentators are all bothered. Why is one who's obligated greater? The original premise of the Gemara sounds more correct. Obviously, volunteer is greater. So all the approach, I think, follow a similar vein. There's a difference when a guy who volunteers 25 hours a week, and then there's a 20-inch, snowstorm. And the guy says, I can't come in today. I can't volunteer today. No one gets upset at them. But the postman has to do what they call it. That's the old term. The mail delivery person, whatever. The UPS drivers are getting $170,000. And everybody see this in the news? It's unbelievable. You see this in the news this week. UPS, their union negotiated. Guy drives a truck. UPS, United Parcel Service, they're getting salaries $170,000 a year because there's a UPS is so busy, they don't have enough drivers. Unbelievable. So they have to deliver in 34 inches of snow and 28 degrees below zero. Because when you're obligated to do something, you have no choice. And that's what the commentaries basically said. When you and there's a natural instinct. I don't like to be told what to do. A volunteer, I do because I want to do it. There's a certain element in the mitzvah to do a mitzvah because you don't want to do it. That shows the greater aspect. Yeah, I don't always like getting, you know what? I went to bed at 2:00 in the morning last night. I really did. It's not so much later than usual, but a little later. I wouldn't have mind if I didn't have to get up for minyan this morning. So we're like, it would have been easier to sleep in bed an extra half an hour. But I don't know if I have to. I don't know if exactly no obligation. But I have to do. You get up and a certain that's what it. But if you don't have to get up, you sleep in. And you get up when you don't have to. Ooh, that's amazing. So again, there's this tension. Even when the Talmud says that a volunteer obligatory is on a higher level. I love this beautiful comment of the Maharal of Prague. The Maharal of Prague has in his commentary on Rashi, Gur Aryeh. It's not in the. It's called Gur Aryeh. That's his commentary on Rashi. It says Im kesef talve et ami. If you lend your compatriot, your brethren money, don't charge them interest. It's a mitzvah to give. One of the mitzvah Torah to give tzedakah, and the Torah says if you lend money. So Rashi says this is one of the 3 times the Torah if doesn't mean if means when. What do you mean if you lend money? You're obligated to give a loan. If you can afford it, somebody asks for a loan, that's the highest level of tzedakah. What do you mean if? When? So Rashi points out right away, even though it says im, it means ki. So the Maharal is a very simple question. That's very nice. Why doesn't the Torah say so? Why the Torah means when, say it. Don't say if and tell me if means when. That's ridiculous. No, it means if. If the Torah knows how to say when. And the Torah said if, it means if. So what are the rabbis getting off saying this idea that if means when? So that's a beautiful answer. Why do you give tzedakah? Because they have to or because they want to? You should give tzedakah because you want to. You have to, whether you want to or not. But you should do it because you want to. So the Torah writes the ideal. If. I should love to give tzedakah. How can I not help my fellow man? How can I not help people? So yes, that's the idea that a volunteer is on a higher level. To do something as a volunteer, technically speaking, one who's obligated gets more involved for technical reasons, but obviously volunteering is greater. In other words, we don't do away with, that's why the Gemara begins. Volunteering is better. Yes, on a technical level, because they have to do in the HR, whatever, there are no excuses. But the Torah doesn't want us to do mitzvah because we're obligated. I mean, to eat pork, not to eat pork. That the Rambam says. The ethical mitzvot we do because we want to do, and the ritual mitzvot are chukim, the ones we don't rationally understand. Well, why can't they eat pork? Well, so that I don't have to do because I want to do. That I do because I have to do. But so there is something very beautiful about doing as a volunteer, and that is something that a woman has. That a man doesn't have. And I often really say that, I really mean it. That's something non-Orthodox Jews have that Orthodox Jews don't have. Non-Orthodox Jews who chooses to go to shul, on Shabbos, now they're choosing. They choose to do the mitzvot because they don't feel they're obligated the same way that we do. So there's something. I'm jealous. I mean, I don't want you to misunderstand me. I'm glad, Baruch Hashem, to follow the Torah and mitzvot as well as I can. I think everybody's obligated to. I don't like this denominational stuff. It's all post. None of this is in the Torah. But in practice, a Jew who's quote unquote non-Orthodox, and then they do mitzvot, they have a Friday night meal, they do this and that. So they're doing it out of choice. So there's something, to be said for that, where often we do things because we have no choice. Okay, that's call in a minute. Okay. All right. Anything else? Otherwise,
Rabbi J, what's the bottom line? Can a woman blow shofar for a man today or not?
no. The bottom line is, unless somebody picks up, if a Moshe Feinstein type person, if I don't know who the great poskim, if Rav Asher Rice were to write a tshuva that based on this argument that a woman can blow shofar, I would say it's allowed. But I'm still, I hear the argument. I'm not sure that I fully, I can say even if one's, I can still say it's not the same obligation. They're not allowed to blow shofar. But so I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that women can blow for men. I'm just saying it's an interesting argument conceptually. This is not a halacha course. We're talking about Jewish thought. So there's something women have taken upon themselves the obligation to blow shofar. Whether that raises to a technical level that they're on the same level of men, that's not for me. That's for the great poskim to decide. And it could be in 50 years, they will decide. You understand a question like this in the world we live in. And this is something poskim have to take into account. It's more than the technical halacha. You can imagine the political bombshell, something like this, if it was. But like all changes, they happen when they happen naturally, and you don't notice. They happen when you announce them. That's the whole debate on a lot of the women's issues. Like my brother claimed that Avi Weiss, when he did Marat, put women's whatever 10 years backwards, because by making an announcement he created opposition. Other people argue, no, you have to make announcements. I don't know, I'm not expressing an opinion here, but it's true. Generally changes happen naturally, sort of unnoticed, and then they happen. So they happen even in the most ultra-Orthodox, conservative places, change is happening. But when you announce change, that's when you get revolt. So we're not there. But what Tosfot was doing, what I was saying was justifying practices. That's the practice existed, sort of, and you said, well, how does this go? How do Jews eat fish by taking bones out? It's borer. That's in Chaim Soloveitchik's article. So they make up something to do. It's the practice happened. It's not that the rabbis announced practice. I mean, if you want to give another weirder example, I know it's the exact same. Turkey. There's no doubt that had rabbis come to America 200 years early, Turkey would not be kosher. Absolutely, I'm convinced. There's no doubt nobody would eat turkey. We have no Masorah that turkey is a kosher animal. Nothing. What happened is Jews ate turkey, except if you're a Heller. The Hellers don't. The Tosfot Yontif, his family, I think they have a tradition not to eat turkey. But when the first rabbi didn't arrive in America until 1860, Rabbi Abraham Price, I think, and not the Price in Toronto, but his name was Price in Baltimore. Can you imagine they had Jews in America from 1654, 200 years, no rabbi? Wow! Imagine if you took a vote today, get rid of rabbis for 200 years, right? There are no rabbis in America for 200 years. Okay, when for the first Jews came, only in the 1860s, first rabbis came to America. By that time, the rabbis come. And Jews are all eating turkey. Jews who are Shomer Shabbos are eating turkey. So the rabbis had to find so the OU gives a hechsher on turkey and all eat turkey. But I know historically, so you're going to tell me there's another discussion. But yes, I'm going to tell you that.
Jay, I believe I've heard that Rav Shechter doesn't eat turkey.
Okay, that could be. He didn't drink milk for a while because Rav Shechter is ish kulo emet. And I'll take another extreme. Yeah, that's very. Rav Shechter is a person, he doesn't care. I God forbid, I don't mean it. He does. If we find out things are wrong, we must change him. Rav Shechter is kulo emet. I was in a shir for 4 years. I can tell you, I heard it with my own ears. If we were to find the Sefer Torah and we were convinced it was Moshe Rabbeinu's Sefer Torah and it's different than our Sefer Torah, we would change our Torah to the real Torah. It means our Masorah is wrong. That's why Rav Shechter will wear tchelet, whereas Rav Lichtenstein didn't wear tchelet. The Rav wouldn't wear tchelet because it's not our Masorah. Rav Shechter says if we can prove our Masorah other ways, and if in other words, that's the thing, that's the question. They found them, and Rav Licht, that's the story they told. They asked Rav Lichtenstein, what do we find the Torah? And it'd be different. So Rav Lichtenstein, who cares? That was the whole thing on manuscript. When you find manuscripts, the Chazon Ish says, who cares? We don't follow manuscripts. We have a Masorah. We don't worry. And Rav Shechter was not like that at all. Rav Shechter was, no, if this is, we know it's true. So we did it wrong for 300 years. Now we have to change it. So it doesn't surprise, I don't know this, but it would not surprise me one bit that Rav Shechter wouldn't eat turkey, because he would say, well, where does eating turkey come from? Whereas the traditional Orthodox approach is not the Rav Shechter approach, is the Rav Lichtenstein approach, is the Rav Soloveitchik approach. No, we have a Masorah. And Turkey became accepted among Jews. We're not exactly sure why, but if Jews are doing it, if religious Jews, it must be right. And that was the tradition we've had for hundreds of years from the Gemara. Go see what the people are doing. If religious people are doing it, if the non-religious are people doing that, doesn't count. But if the religious people are doing it, it must be. So that's where the OU Taka gives us kracha. Of course, Rav Shechter is the posek for the OU. So that's very interesting. So I imagine Rav Shechter is a lot. It's the chumrah for himself. He doesn't expect people to do this, but that's very interesting. But thank you for that. But yeah. I don't know exactly how far we would carry that, but that's what he said. If we found out there are mistakes in our tradition, we have to correct our mistakes. We don't believe in doing something. That's why Rosh Hashanah told us. I mentioned we don't believe in precedent. He was the one. I didn't hear that from other rabbis. We don't follow precedent. But I heard from Rosh Hashanah, we don't follow precedent. Precedent is nice. Yeah, obviously, look, see if they're right. But just because a great rabbi said something 150 years ago doesn't mean we're bound by what they say. No, that's Rosh Hashanah is very into this sort of very different approach. I don't know if people know Rav Shachter well. I mean, they know him because he doesn't think a woman should blow shofar for a man. Let's put it that way. He for sure doesn't think that, but he's ish kulo emet, and I think, okay, but thank you. Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, with
I'm still
regard,
impressed people are still here. Oh my gosh, okay.
with regard to the Thanksgiving thing, when I did research on it, when I was teaching, one approach that I found very interesting is you should do it, but every so often you should not do it, so your kids should understand it's not a chiyuv.
What's this? Eat
The Thanksgiving dinner, yeah.
Soloveitchik ate turkey every Thanksgiving. He went to
All right,
he
I
ended
just-
here
yeah.
early. Some say that with an Eruv. I've heard that said with an Eruv. If you live in China, it's true. Yeah, if I ever go to a place without an Eruv, it's really hard because I've lived my whole life with an Eruv. And some people, and it's a malacha grew, as the Talmud said. It's people are very lenient, which is why we need to build Eruvim. But you'll see people are right. But I don't think anybody thinks halachically you have to do it. I mean, once in a while, yeah, I don't know where. I've heard that
When
said.
the kids are little, they should know that it's not something it's
Yeah,
it's
but
a
I
different
see. I don't like
status
that
and
by Turkey.
it's not a
really
religion. It's
think-
not our religious.
Oh yeah, not because it's kosher, but because Thanksgiving's not a Jewish hholiday. Is that
Yeah,
what you-
yeah.
Yes, I
Sorry.
don't know. I don't know if you think Thanksgiving you shouldn't celebrate it. Don't celebrate it. Ramosha Feinstein, it was no fan of Thanksgiving. Ramosha Feinstein, I mentioned his words a little wild. Ramosha, I wrote about this when they had Daf Yomi on January 1st. Even though Daf Yomi ended on January 4th, they did the Siyum on January 1st because New Year's, everybody was off. They rent the Meadowlands. So I just commented, I found that so funny. The Aguda, recognizing New Year's. Of course, I understand why, and I think it was the right decision. Don't get me wrong. I just found it so cute that, this organization that is so against assimilation, here they are like promoting the biggest event they have in 7.5 years is New Year's Day. And Moshe Feinstein has a tshuva that it's better not to get married on a Sunday. Wow. Nobody follows this. Because Sunday, Sunday, it's a Christian holiday. Well, getting married. Why do you get married on Sunday? Convenient. So I'm being machshiv. I'm giving importance to Sunday. Ramosha doesn't say it's usher. He didn't say it's forbidden. Better not to. I can tell you, the Shomrei Emunah, was that the name of the shul in Silver Spring when Rabbi Einemer was the rabbi? And I used to visit my friends in Silver Spring. They daven Sunday morning, like on Friday morning. 7, they didn't have an 8:30 meeting. Like every shul davens late on Sunday in America. No. What's Sunday? Sunday, we don't put Chol HaMoed, you daven late. Chol HaMoed, what's Sunday? So no shul does that. That's not what we do. But I just find it, I think it's nice to know that Moshe Feinstein says, maybe don't get married on Sunday. I don't know. So I don't know. I can watch NFL football. Like, I don't know what to say, but it was like, it's an amazing thing. He doesn't usher it, of course, and he doesn't usher turkey or Thanksgiving either, but he's clearly, Thanksgiving is more, he's more against Thanksgiving. So I don't remember his exact wording, but okay, Ramosha comes from a different world. Rav Soloveitchik, it's a great mitzvah. And Ramosha called America Malchut Shel Chesed. Ramosha had tremendous gratitude.
Right.
But don't get me wrong, the fact that he's not celebrating Thanksgiving has nothing to do with not being an American patriot. Ramosha was a great American patriot. He just didn't feel that Jews should celebrate Thanksgiving because it has religious overtones. I mean, clearly I'm not an American, but the Plymouth and obviously there were religious overtones to Thanksgiving. That goes without saying. It's in Sukkot's time. We have it on Sukkot. We have it in Turkey. Why is turkey different from chicken? Because we have a tradition that chicken is kosher. Chicken's not a wild animal. Turkey's much wilder. The simanim, the signs we have for kosher animals, we know chicken fits in, and Jews have been eating chicken for 2,000 years. Turkey was a new animal, didn't exist in Europe. And I don't think, and they came here, and it's sort of, it looks pretty wild. Like it's not the type of animal that tends to be kosher. So that's why. But Jews were eating it, so they came up with some het there, except for those Jews who don't eat it. Okay, Shabbos is getting earlier. I mean, early, it's August, the weeks get earlier, although we're still at Kelman. Yes, Marty, how are you?
Okay, two questions. One is about your Pasha thing last week. You were talking about the Rambam and how he said the rabbis and the Talmud that they learned secular stuff, that stuff. So my question is, did the Rambam actually know that, or did he have the idealistic view of the rabbi about how a rabbi should be, and he sort of.
I mean, what's the source of the Rambam that a Jew should study philosophy day and night or whatever? Kimat.
Yeah.
Listen, that's and the whole other.
Not so much that I can understand why he would say that it should be, but I don't understand why he would say that that's the way it was. Like,
I don't know what the Rambam is saying. The Rambam had no interest in history, by the way. The Rambam had no interest in history. So I don't know what the Rambam is claiming other people claimed. But the Rambam had, the Rambam revolutionized Judaism, and he revolutionized it so well. We don't know that we don't recognize it's a revolution. I mean, not everything. Certain things we didn't accept the Rambam, but the Rambam and certain things have not been accepted. It's Rambam's approach on philosophy. I don't have to tell you, is not mainstream. It's not accepted in mainstream Orthodox, circles. And the Rambam had views that border on what would classically be considered heresy. The Rambam clearly, that parts of the Torah are allegorical. I mean, all kinds of things the Rambam said. His historical analysis of the Torah, the Torah is really a response to paganism. I mean, the Rambam said things. That's one of the reasons nobody studied that in yeshivas. They don't study the Mor Nebuchi, because it's like, oh my gosh, like he says things that are like unbelievable. But okay, that's for another course we have to have on the Rambam's philosophy. We've had that a little bit, but the Rambam, read Menachem Kellner's article a few issues ago in tradition. That's when I invited him to speak after I read that article. A fantastic article. I don't remember how long, within the last 2 years, since COVID for sure. In tradition, you can look it up online. Menachem Kellner wrote an article on the Rambam. And it was I found the article so moving, so beautiful, because he discussed what do we do with those Rambams that go against our way of life. Some of the things the Rambam says about women, we would cringe at, and some of the things the Rambam says are things we cannot, some things the Rambam says are absolutely beautiful and totally with what do we do? And he discussed it, that I think it's a beautiful article. And he basically admits in our world, and according to the modern Orthodox world, we say, we just don't accept this Rambam. That's very nice. The Rambam can say that. No, that's not our view of Judaism. He says in the yeshiva world, it's much harder for people to do things like that. So they kind of want to ignore the Rambam because they can't deal with it. But I think I'm not doing a fair summary of the article, but I highly recommend that article. I don't remember 3 editions, 4 editions, 5 editions ago in the last couple of years in tradition, which are all available online. Look up Menachem Kellner, and it's something about the Rambam, and you can see that. Okay.
Rabbi.
Yes.
I'm Sharon, Marty's wife. How are
Sorry.
you? I just have a comment to make.
I do have to get up soon. Okay, I'm sorry.
I have a comment about Thanksgiving.
Yes.
So I come from a rabbinic family. All my uncles are rabbis. My aunts are married to rabbis, and they all had
Like me.
I'm sorry.
Like me, I also come from a rabbinic family.
So no one. We could never get together on any yontif. So Thanksgiving.
Right. No, Thanksgiving is very beautiful, right? That's a big problem in Israel. Why they need a Sunday in Israel, right? Correct.
Yeah.
Rabbis can't go away for Yom Tov. Yeah, Thanksgiving is a great time, right? That's why in the modern Orthodox world, Thanksgiving is such a big holiday. It's like a Yom Tov when you can drive.
You can drive, you can cook. It's wonderful.
Right, it's beautiful. Can even eat turkey.
You could even eat turkey.
Right? Yeah, 100%. Okay. Want to wish everybody, any other last comments? I don't want to, I don't want to stay for anybody, but otherwise wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. Please invite a friend. We'll see you next week. We'll start on the Machzor, and enjoy. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom.